You guys are never going to guess what this talk is about, but I'll reveal. It's about some modules I've released in the past year or two, and I figured I'd tell you about them because they might have just floated by if you look at the MetaCPAN recent releases, and I think some of them are kind of useful. So the first one is called App CI Setup. And also I'd like to thank my former employer, MaxMind, for releasing the code that I wrote while I was there and sharing it with me under an open source license so I could release it to CPAN. Basically, this is a tool for generating and managing Travis and AppVeyor files, primarily right now oriented at Perl projects. It could be expanded to do others. If you're like me and you have, I don't know, 50 or 100 modules, and you'd really like to get all of them going through CI, and then you're like, oh, I should add another Perl to the list of Perls to test with. It's really, really irritating to have to edit 50 files to add a Perl. So these files are YAML, so this tool will manage it for you. It's still in a somewhat rudimentary state, but it will do some basic stuff, and I think it's, another nice thing is if you don't know what your Travis file should look like or AppVeyor file should look like, this will generate one for you, which should work for a normal Perl project. So it's a good start. Patches are very much welcome. Another tool I wrote, so not to cast aspersions, but I'm not loving rt.cpan.org as much as maybe I used to, and I'm loving GitHub issues a little more. So I took some code that I want to say David Golden had written and was like in a gist somewhere, and tweaked it a little and turned it into a CPAN module. So now you can run this. You go into a repo that's a GitHub repo, you run this, and it'll prompt you with some questions, trying to figure out the answers based on information in the repo, and it'll transfer all the issues over. It's not perfect. One annoying thing is the reporter for all the issues will now be you, because there's no way to create an issue as being reported by somebody else in the GitHub API, which if you think about it is probably a very good decision on their part since the reporter is automatically tagged and CC'd, and it would be a spam engine otherwise. Anyway. Okay, so how many of you have used params validate? Fair number. So it's a module I wrote. It's one of the first things I released to CPAN, probably 15 years or more ago. And I've been using it a long time myself. Stephen Little wrote MooseX params validate, which builds on top of it and lets you use Moose types as your validation. And somebody had written this whole XS implementation of params validate, which was great. And the more I use it, the more I use MooseX params validate, I was just like, man, this is really a bottleneck. So I wrote this new module. So throw out all your code that uses params validate and start using this new module. It is, despite being pure Perl, significantly faster than params validate, much, 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 much faster than MooseX params validate because it generates inline code. So if your type constraints are inlineable, those of you who use type systems in Perl might know what I'm talking about. It will generate a very highly optimized subroutine for you that does the validation. You can use it with the Moose built-in types or MooseX types, TypeTiny, and Specchio. So it's a nice, flexible, fast system. Last thing, I think this is the last thing I can mention, a tool called MetaGrapher Moose. So if you're like me and you start working on a project and you have a Moose class and then you have a few roles and then maybe you have some other roles that are consumed by the roles and then you start feeling a little saucy and you have some parameterized roles and pretty soon things can get a little complicated and you're like looking at your code and you're like, oh, what roles does this use? It just gets confusing. So if you've committed this sort of sin, then this tool may help you. So it's just a command line tool. You run it, you give it a package, you tell it where to output the file. There's two renderers, GraphViz, which looks like crap, and PlantUML, which looks really good but requires you to have a jar file just sitting around. And it will make a graph like this. Now, if your code is this complicated, that's bad. But anyway, it will probably help you better understand the code that you have created. And that is it. Thank you very much.